Welcome to the Caregiving Podcast. I'm Inga.
And I'm Julie.
And long story short, we have Caregiving. We are two momtrepreneurs who have built an in-home care business from the ground up, guided every step of the way by God's care and fueled by agape love. Almost 14 years later, we felt called to create this podcast as a resource for families with caregiving needs. Whether you care for a family member or are looking for advice on professional caregiving, we want this to be a platform to support you.
Each week, we will come to you with encouraging stories of families who have found the right balance for their loved ones, tips for how to care for them and you, and much more. We hope you continue to join us each week as we share in this exciting new journey together.
Hello, Sunshines, and hello, Julie. How the heck are you?
I am really, really good.
Yeah?
Yes.
Do you believe it's December already?
Oh, I just can't get over it.
Yeah, the holidays are upon us. We've been through Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up. What do you have planned?
Just survival.
Survival?
Yes. It's so much fun and so fast and furious.
Yeah.
I think it's actually the anticipation that gets me.
Yeah, you have something big that you're doing in, next week?
Oh, yes, I'm playing hooky and actually going to the NFR.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Notice, listeners, she plays hooky a lot. That was discussed last episode. No, I'm just teasing.
Speaking of that,
she barely
survival.
ever does. Oh, NFR, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I'm excited for this episode today. The guest speaker that we have with us, this is a person that we've been wanting to have come on, and he has a very, very busy schedule. And so to work us in, we're just really happy. But we're going to keep you in suspense for a little bit, and we're going to go into our verse of the week. This one, actually, we've been getting a lot of verses that are submitted without stories to go along with them. So when we read through them, we're trying to pick or select ones that are meaningful to the episode topic of the day. So Julie actually picked this one out of what's been submitted, and this is Proverbs 3:13 through 18. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. She offers you long life in her right hand and riches and honor in her left. She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. Yeah, so our kind of thought has always been this knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And so we always want to keep learning. And again, as we get into the topic of today, this is something that's on our minds, things that we see go on in the community. And we just wanted to bring in a professional to talk to us a little bit about these things from his perspective. So do you have a happy story?
Well, in honor of our guest speaker, who is still a surprise, I was going to talk about some small acts of kindness that make a big difference. And it says, police officer is the answer many young kids give when asked what they want to be when they grow up. Police are real-life superheroes in the eyes of many, thanks to officers like these who go above and beyond their call of duty. And there's some examples of pretty cool superheroes. When no one showed up to an autistic boy's birthday party, strangers saved the day. And the mom had put something on Facebook. Some police officers saw it, and so a bunch of police officers arrived to go to the birthday party. A second example is police officers take daughter of fallen cop to a father-daughter dance. Officers' act of kindness helps shoplifter out of a difficult situation. Cop carries woman with MS down the stairs.
Oh.
Yeah. Police officers' last act of kindness minutes before death. And this one I think I should read. San Diego, California, police officer Jeremy Henwood bought lunch for a boy he didn't know just minutes before the officer was killed in an unprovoked shooting rampage 6 blocks from the McDonald's restaurant. Oh. Yeah. Texas officer gives homeless man helping hand. Photo of Toronto cop Mark Borsman tying senior's shoes is touching. Oh. And so those are examples of these superheroes that do day-to-day things that really make a difference.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. Well, I'll quickly tell you my uplifting story, and this is about the Lego Oma, Lego Grandma. Rita Ebel she is a citizen, and she lives in Hanau, Germany. I believe I pronounced that correctly. She was actually in a car accident like 25 years ago that left her in a wheelchair. And in the wheelchair, she found that it was very hard to access like shops and cafes and different businesses just in her own hometown. And so it inspired her to start building ramps out of Legos.
Oh,
Yeah, so wheelchair ramps out of Legos that can help her get in and out of these shops. And apparently there are 62 colorful Lego ramps that have already been created and delivered. And I'm assuming this means in her hometown. And then there are 60 other cities that are building these, and she's actually taking it global. So she's starting to be established in Russia, Switzerland, Italy, France, and Austria.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, so go Lego Oma.
So is that like super big Legos or the little baby ones that you step on that hurt really bad?
Well, when they're all put together, I think it doesn't hurt as bad.
Okay.
And you're going over it with wheelchair. Right. And I don't know. Mostly I don't know. Oh my gosh. You guys, if you have a verse to submit to us or you have an uplifting story, anything you would like us to share, we would love to hear from you. You can submit those to thecaregivenpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that is thecaregivenpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. Now, Inga, go ahead. Tell everybody who we have.
Yes, I'm sure you didn't pick up on it, but we do have our very own real life superhero here with us today. And this is Kalispell Chief of Police, Doug Overman. We did ask what he likes to be called, and he said Doug.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I was just processing what I got myself into there momentarily. But this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Well, go ahead and just give us a little bit. Tell us, what's your bio?
What's my bio? Well, if I had to break it down, I'm just a Montana kid trying to make a difference in the world. I grew up in Sealy Lake. Had a great experience in high school and growing up there in a small town, Montana. Ended up at the University of Montana in Missoula. So, pretty happy about this last football game.
Go Grizz.
Exactly. I got a degree in sociology and paid my way through college primarily through doing wildland fire. I did 6 years of wildland fire for the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. And quite frankly, at that point, I knew that I wanted to continue to do something that was in the emergency services. And University of Montana has sociology, criminology program, but no fire sciences program. So I went in sociology, criminology, got out of college, really started my first job at the Missoula Pre-Release Center. And that was really great. It's really grounded me. It was very much, in the entry-level case manager portion, but it really forced me to get to know, people who've had challenges in their life on a more personal basis because they're living in that facility and you're interacting with them constantly. And things are controlled, but at the same time, they're allowed some flexibility and freedom. And so you develop and know people on a real personal level. And I think that really, catapulted what I've done later in my career and my ability and to understand and see the many shades of gray in the world. From there, I came up to Kalispell in the 90s, late 90s, as a probation and parole officer for the state of Montana. And while I was working with probation and parole there, I worked a couple cases with the Kalispell Police Department, and they did a pretty good recruiting job of trying to get me.
I bet.
In year 2000, I was hired by then Chief Frank Garner. And just notably, the biggest thing I remember about that particular hiring date was my interview. I can easily remember the date. It was June 29th, 2000. It was scheduled for 10 o'clock. My son, who is now 21 years old, was born at 9:59 a.m. on June 29th of 2000. So I called the staff there at school at KPD and said, "Hey, I'm not going to make it." And they said the interview committee agreed to hold over for a few hours for me.
Thank goodness.
So I was able to get it together, and somehow I was hired as the first of that group. And I've done most roles at the police department. I've been of course a patrol officer, out in the streets, and really the core fundamental of what we do. And I slid into a resource officer program after that. Did that for 5 years. Had a great experience. It was really engaging. I built relationships that still play dividends to this day. Mm-hmm. And then moved into a detective position for a while, back to the patrol as a sergeant supervising, including motor officer. I was a sergeant of the motor program that we had then. And then investigations captain, where I was supervising the detective division. And then now for 3 years, if you can believe that, 3 years I've been the chief of police at Kalispell.
Oh my goodness,
that is just incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you love what you do.
Yeah, it's been an amazing career to me. Every once in a while you take it for granted, or it becomes work, and then we just went through a hiring process, and we are one of the agencies around the country that are are getting really good applicants right now. And you go through and you see those young people who just so badly want to get the opportunity to work for a community like Kalispell, and it refreshes you, reminds you how lucky and blessed you truly are. And I always say, the best recruiting tool we have for the Kalispell Police Department are the people of Kalispell, because people want to be here.
Yeah.
And, you can talk to some of our officers who have relocated from other areas or came here, and they're so grateful for the appreciation of the community. And, just like what you guys just start off this program with, it just reaffirms that. And it's a great recruiting tool for me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. My youngest daughter, I'm going to say it, she's a Bobcat.
As is my wife.
Yes. She's a sophomore there, and she's in sociology criminology.
Spectacular.
So at some point, we're going to have to get together, and you can guide her into, because I'm a little worried about it. There's so many different places to go with that kind of a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of described a varied path, and it built a lot of fundamentals in me, and it built some different perspective. And, a police department should be people, some of them that are, maybe a few that are GED, maybe a few that are military, some that are college, because the community is a few people that are
everything.
All of those
everything.
things.
It should be a diverse, section of gender and race, and it should represent your community. And, because ultimately you're accountable and have a relationship with your community.
Yes.
Yeah, and we feel that just really intimately here as well, because we look back on all the jobs that we held that pulled us together when we found each other and started this business. And when it comes to just working with people, you have to be a person.
Oh, absolutely.
No matter what your title is.
It's funny, I look back in high school years, and, I was a shy little boy, and you don't get, Seeley Lake isn't exactly the big world, But one of my very first formal job was box boy at the Valley Market in Seeley Lake, which still stands there. And I spent 3 years doing that. And that really forced me to interact and engage with strangers and have conversations, and still skills that pay dividends to this day, started back when I was 15 years old.
Yep.
So true.
Yep.
We're losing a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, that technology connects us in certain ways, throughout the world, but then some of that person-to-person connection is slipping away.
Yeah. I think people almost forget how to have a conversation with each other because they can just text it or send a message or send an email. And so to have that conversation, we need to keep that going.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. So basically, we always want to talk about things that are applicable to the demographic that we're primarily serving. And Julie and I had discussed that while our conversation with you is about the Kalispell community, I'm sure that it applies everywhere. When we're talking about some of the things that you see from a law enforcement perspective that go on with our elders, it happens everywhere, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story. We'll start with this story about Patsy. That's my grandma. And Patsy had gotten a phone call, on the phone that upset her very much. It was somebody that said, "Hey, Patsy, your granddaughter Bailey is going to go to jail unless you send me $10,000." And Grandma was in her late 80s at that time, and it just sent her through the roof. And instead of just calling me and saying, "Where's your daughter?" or calling my daughter, she actually was, she immediately started wondering where she could get the money. And finally, I think she slowed down enough to call, and I was just so mad. They had given her a number to call them back when she had the money. And so I called that number and called them pretty much every name in the book several times. I was so mad. I said, "How can you be this person? How can you take advantage of these elders like this?" And I was just furious. Thankfully, we stopped Grandma, but I bet a lot of people don't get stopped.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's all too common, and there are infinite challenges with what we've seen in the last few years, and the phone scamming. Just for an example, I get auto-generated phone calls to my office threatening to call local law enforcement. So, and my cell phone as well, those automatic calls came up, and I just told you guys earlier, I was anticipating a phone call before we started this program, and it was a auto-generated call. Yeah. So frustrated to no end. And, thank goodness I have seen the personal experience to recognize those from my own behalf. The challenge has become with enforcement with this, and that's why it's so imperative that we participate in this prevention component,
Yep.
because a lot of these things are based overseas in India or Africa, and so a reality that we ever get $10,000 or $15,000 back for a victim of one of these scams is exceptionally low, if not impossible.
Right.
So prevention is where we need to put every ounce we can. And, when I was back on patrol is when I first really started dealing with some of this. And it's been a few years now. But one of the most striking ones I have, and I won't mention any names or violate any trust here, was we got a call of a person, elderly man that was coming to town to meet someone at one of our local grocery stores to send a money order to someone who promised him that he had won the lottery. And all he needed to do was send, the X amount to collect the funds as a deposit fee. And so we got there and waited and interrupted that. And the gentleman, even after I was there in uniform and spent every moment I could and every effort I could to convince him that this was not a real deal, he was still convinced that I was wrong, and that you can imagine if they're struggling financially, they want this to be true.
Sure.
Oh,
And they want to be able to set up their family or have that comfort. And so the hope that they have. And so eventually they call him back while he's there, wanting to know where the money was.
Sure.
And so I said, get me on the phone with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a fair amount of time on the phone with him and explained who I was, and it's quickly turned to profanity and insulting me and telling me to put him back on the phone. And, at that point, all I could do was try to counsel and support and prevent him from making that choice, because once that money's gone, it's gone. And so, that, and just seeing that hope and, the heartbreak, in his face when I was there explaining that to him, it made me realize how it's more than just the financial damage. It's trust, it's hope, it's belief. And that, especially with elderly folks, that can weigh heavy and it can be embarrassing and it can be hurtful.
That's what I think, on the embarrassing component, I think it happens a lot and people don't know, because if you've been taken advantage of and you finally come to that realization, it's almost like you don't want to talk about it or don't want anyone to know that you were tricked.
Yes. And that's one of the challenges you see is you do see, there's humility that goes along with it, and shame. And, and some of these things are they're amazingly well set up. And the creativity that these scammers have, and they have all day, they have all the technology in the world. I encourage you. I was just encouraging my friends last night out of fun. There's a YouTube channel, actually several YouTube channels, where an individual makes it his YouTube channel to answer these calls, disguise his voice as an elderly person, and then ultimately hack into and take control of the computers of the scammers.
Oh, wow.
And then watch them, and he drains their money and destroys their computers, and then watch their response. It's just so frustrating, and they're many times based overseas. So if you want a little sense of some justice with some of these folks,
I'm gonna have to look that up for
it's,
sure.
it's at least a little bit entertaining. Nobody's hurt, but it's a little payback, it seems.
Right.
Yeah. Well, at least now my grandma has learned that she's not to believe those calls, and she immediately will call me and go, honey, I have a phone number for you to call. These people called and asked me for money. I want you to call them, because she thinks I saved the day.
Spectacular. That she trusts you, that she has a confidant that she can seek. That's, again, we get these complaints, and I sent $15,000 to
That's so much money
in Nigeria or wherever it is. We're not getting that back as a local police department. So it's so important that we do prevention and that we get information out there, and just to support people, because it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the the home improvement fraud stuff? Do you guys see much of that?
We'd gone through cycles. I had did a big case. It's been a little bit of time, but occasionally we see the like the driveway folks coming through that are selling you some super duper product, and they come throw it down, and technically you're getting something for it, but it's probably not worth the value that it is. The other one a lot of times we see or have seen is the roofing industry, where they start jobs or they peel roofs, and they get deposit and either ask for an increased amount over what they originally did, or just never finish the job and disappear.
Oh, sure.
And so my advice on there is to vet local contractors, trust and look for local people. If the deal's too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, even on the opposite end of that, we had a gentleman that I went and did a home visit with, and he kept talking about the new walk-in tub he was going to be getting. And so it was obviously at the top of his mind. So I asked him, well, show me where it's going to go. And what about this? Well, they were going to charge him like $27,000, $30,000 for a walk-in tub. And he had the contract in front of him and all. And anyway, turns out to be a good story, because with me calling his family and talking to them, we were able to get him out of that.
Good.
But boy, you just never know.
And
it's going to
again,
be taken.
It's it's a faith in people, and you hate to see that broken. And trust. Unfortunately, some people try to profit from other people's misfortune, and with the home improvement stuff, I mean, obviously that's a little local. If you have gone through something like that, please reach out to us.
Sure.
Those are things that we can chase.
Sure.
Some of the online phone call and internet email scam stuff, those are really challenging. And I'll at the end of our conversation, I'll give people a reference as well as someplace they can go file a complaint at the federal level. And then sometimes, federal law enforcement can accumulate enough data with multiple scammers to pursue some of these things, beyond what we could do as a local law enforcement agency.
I have a fax upstairs on my desk from a Nigerian prince that just wants like $200,000 from me. Think it's legit?
I thought that was my deal. I'm suddenly,
whichever one of us gets
I'm
back to
suddenly crushed.
Oh man.
Well, no, I'm crushed. I didn't get one.
Yeah. Well, and that's when we talk about the evolution of it. One of the ones we've seen recently is, someone does a ruse to get your bank account information by calling and saying that, hey, it's the bank and we need to check your login or whatever. And then they get in there and they make a fake deposit. Like, oh, we accidentally over deposited, $10,000. Can you send it back to us? So they look in their account and there's an over deposit of $10,000. And so they then return the money. So, there only one side of that money is real that gets sent.
Right.
And, that's another one. And it's the ruse, the other one, of course, of the IRS and government. And, most people out there are rule followers and, they want to comply. Yep. My advice with all those are, never believe them. Always call back. Always do your independent research. I just recently got a call. My credit card was compromised and was being used in Minnesota, and which really pretty common thing.
Sure.
But I got a phone call from my bank, and I was like, you know what, I'll call you back. And it turned out to be a legitimate phone call. But sure. I looked up with my bank, looked at their direct contact number, was able to affirm that I was in fact calling my bank. Yep. And then routed through the appropriate channels to confirm that phone call had been real. But, that's a skepticism I carry in my own life as a result of the experiences I've got to have with other people who have been victims of these things.
Yeah, I do think that the banks have really, and credit cards have really had to step it up. And if they see anything that they think is weird. Yeah,
it was amazing. I was down in Sealy and hunting and hanging out. And it was just a matter of maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours before the bank was calling me saying, hey, there's some inconsistent activity on your card. Are you doing it? And so that was good. However, I keep that phone call at arm's length until I make the call back to ensure that it's on my terms.
Sure.
And I'm not getting information or being asked for information that I'm not comfortable with.
Well, the thing is that like cybercrime, it impacts so many people. We've even dealt with big, huge organizations who have been impacted by like those phishing scams, or, hey, I need the W-2 information that, you know, it's so-and-so from high up in the company. And it can get any one of us. So I think about, I have this friend from Helena, and do you ever watch like Forensic Files or listen to them on like Sirius Radio?
I have not.
Okay. You're like, I get enough of that in my own life. I don't need to go looking for it. Well, anyway, channel 117 is HLN, and that's where all the Forensic Files are. And my friend from Helena, she's like, we listen to this all the time when we're traveling, and my advice is trust no one.
Yeah, you know, yeah. You hate to be that. Trust no one on your, you know, of course we get, you know, I'm an employee of the city of Kalispell, and our IT department does a great job of training us about, you know, cues and things to look for. And, you know, Columbia Falls recently went through a deal where, you know, they were hacked. I mean, it's been a few years ago now, but, you know, there are people out there that if they put their knowledge and energy for good, would change the world. And they have, you know, several have decided to use it for nefarious actions.
Trying to get the quick buck.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what else do you see in the community that we should be watching for or be smarter about? You know,
one of the biggest things is just building community for seniors. The last couple years have been exceptionally difficult. With you know, mental health, and you know, one of the unfortunate jobs that we have in law enforcement, if someone's not under hospice or the direct care of a hospital or physician, and someone passes in their home, or we are called to investigate to ensure that, you know, and it's, we call it an unattended death, and we have to do an investigation of those frequently. You know,
that's terrible.
Many hundred a year, and it's just. When you go in those situations, many times people are surrounded by family, and that happens. But, you know, it also happens where we find folks that no one's really keeping an eye on them, and sometimes it's days, you know, after the fact. We recently had one where we a neighbor, eventually we got a call from someone concerned, but had been on the floor for 3 days, alive, and you know, I think it was broken leg or something. I can't recall the exact circumstances. So it's just, you know, if you know you have elderly neighbors or people on their own, and I get it, people want to live independently as long as they possibly can, and I support them at every level doing that. But we need to look out for each other, and I don't want to lose that sense of community, because we're at this balancing point where we're a really nice sized community. You know, we have some nice options. You can pretty much get everything you need. However, you know, I don't want to see that we get so distanced from each other that we're not looking out for each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I love that.
And so do you guys do, if someone calls you and says, hey, my neighbor, you know, I haven't seen him out and about in the last couple of days, you can do well person checks? Yeah,
we do it. We call it a welfare check. It happens really often, honestly. And, you know, and there's certain cues that we look for when we go to houses. And it's always a big decision, but the law allows us a little more leeway. It's called the community caretaker doctrine. And honestly, it's the best part of my job, is the ability to use that community caretaker doctrine. Because if we were just out there enforcing the law and being robots, I wouldn't want to do this job. We're out there looking out for people, and that's really a lot of what we do. And so we oftentimes get called to a house, and it can, you know, come from the postman, like, hey, you know, Joe hasn't picked up his mail in 6 days, and this is really unusual. And so you go there and look at the circumstances, and you just don't go blasting in doors every time, but you look at the totality, and sometimes we are compelled to enter those homes just through a bunch of circumstances. You know, unfortunately, some of those times we find people in poor condition, and we try to get them to medical treatment as soon as possible. And, you know, sometimes, you know, like this one last week, no doubt in my mind that someone finally noticing all those cues, calling us, save this gentleman. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Do you have situations where you go to do those checks and you do find someone maybe not in the best condition, but they refuse help?
Yeah, and so there's another component of our job that kind of goes hand in hand with the community caretaker doctrine. We have the ability to detain people, not criminally, but civilly, if they're at risk themselves or others, or have the inability to care for themselves, and bring them to the hospital and then have a professional evaluation done of them. So we do use that, more often than not. That tool is utilized in a mental health component where someone is, struggling with self-harming ideas.
Sure.
We also have, in the last 2 years, created this Coresponder Program where we have a corresponding social worker.
Nice.
And Sarah, she works for Western Montana Mental Health. It's a partner, but she's based. The sheriff's department provides her a car. She has an office in the Kalispell Police Department building, and she makes her services available to each community. And she goes out in the field, and once our officers are convinced that it's safe, many times they walk away and let Sarah do her work with people to try to refer them to appropriate resources and just resolve some of the crises at hand. Our only challenge with that program is we actually have, there's a care coordinator position, which is more of a traffic director behind the scenes. And then we have 2 co-responder positions. One is Sarah Winfrey, and the other one is vacant and has been for some time.
Oh, wow.
And so we would love, if anybody's out there listening and has a social work background and wants to work in the field, it's exceptionally challenging. It is alternative hours, but it's going to be experienced like none other. And you're going to see people, at moments of crisis that need your help. And, we as law enforcement have embraced this idea. It's so proud of what we've done as a partnership in this and the additional and different service that we can provide.
We actually just did an episode on mental health and how prevalent it is right now. And so I love the response that you guys are giving. We definitely need more Sarahs.
Yeah.
We just put an ad out, and basically part of the ad is like, do you want to work really, really hard and not get paid what you're worth? Because a caregiver could never be paid what they're worth. They're worth their weight in gold. But I mean, I feel like you just have to get like gritty and honest about it.
And
right?
That's absolutely it. It's like, there's no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind when Sarah goes home at the end of the day that she is emotionally exhausted. But, she comes back and she displays a pride in her job and the joy she does in helping people and seeing her in the field. We just need another good person that would come out in the field with us, and we embrace that. So if you're listening out there, and please contact Western Montana Mental Health and put your application in.
That's awesome.
Speaking of that, just a kind of a different shade of that is actually with dementia and Alzheimer's. When somebody gets a response that somebody's out there, they must be drunk, or they're screaming, they appear lost. How are you guys trained to differentiate so many options?
It goes back to our basic training, and we provide ongoing mental health and CIT training throughout law enforcement's career, and the other one's just hands-on experience. I am so proud of the people that we have and how we deal with people in emotional crisis. We're not perfect. We're not psychologists. We're not social workers. But we do have a social worker now again.
Yes.
But day after day, they show an incredible grace and patience, and they're willing to learn. And it's a culture that we're trying to create. Because, it's really, when I look back at, I talked back in 2000 when I was doing that job interview right after my son was born, I had no idea then how much mental health law enforcement is expected to deal with. Oh, my
goodness.
And so why we need to always continue to grow and engage alternative ways of dealing with mental health issues. We also, I think, do a really good job of showing compassion and trying to make the right choices to support people. And, all of our partners are trying to do, there's just more. The answer is, more resources to the community. We need more resources for long-term inpatient and outpatient treatment. And then, more case management for helping those folks in crisis.
Yeah, I think that's the word that just really sums it up.
Yeah.
For sure.
It always boils down to time and money.
Yeah, and we got to remember our fundamental job is we are first responders.
Absolutely.
We are, our fundamental mission is to respond to crisis. And so many times we're in the field dealing with homelessness or mental health or, just numerous issues. I mean, an officer, that's the great thing about being an officer, right, is that you can go from dealing to mental health to having someone be mad at you because you ticketed them for left door to curb, So that's one of the good things and one of the challenges about it. And it's a diverse job, but the ability to help people, and that's still the fundamental answer that we look for in job interviews. Is like, why do you want to be a cop? Or why do you want to be a police officer? And they better darn well say, I'm here to help people.
Right.
And, you talked about many of those stories in your introduction there, and those things happen on a daily basis. I went to a FBI Academy for a week to a National Command course, and they suggested what's called a silent service campaign it's not our people self-promoting, it's their peers recognizing those small acts of kindness that happen every day, and then letting the community know, because the media is not covering them.
No,
right.
We don't put them out otherwise.
Yeah.
And there are small acts of kindness and compassion. I've seen officers pay for motel rooms, meals, go to their own clothing drawers, and help the homeless with socks from their own clothing drawers and clothes. And that's not the report. That's not the narrative. Right. And so we've started this campaign just to control that message a little bit and say, hey, there's a lot of amazing things happening too, despite what you read.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate you saying that.
And, and again, we're allowed and supported in the community that allows us the flexibility and freedom to do that. Again, fundamentally, our core is, crisis response. But that community caretaker role is what makes this job so valuable and so enjoyable, is that flexibility that we're allowed to find creative solutions to help people onto a better step.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Is there any other topics that come to mind when we're talking about just the community as a whole, or our elderly, that we can talk about just briefly, or do you think we touched on a good bit of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on a good bit of it. I think a lot of it goes with just ensuring that, we have a relationship with our senior community and they don't feel isolated. Again, going back to the last 2 years that we have all faced together and the challenges that we've all faced. And I mean, I think even, some of us that are more mobile and, not quite in those senior years have felt those concerns and anxieties. And it takes a community, right? It's not, we're going to address it as we can as a law enforcement agency, but, we're just an arm of the community and we're all in it together. And when we recognize that, hey, sometimes people don't want to feel like they're snoopy, but sometimes just reaching out and helping a neighbor.
I think a lot of times people, they're not really sure what to say, so they just say nothing. And we need to change that. But I've been very proud of this community and the way that we have responded, especially in the pandemic that we're currently in, with different ways to reach out to people. A lot of our elderly population they're very concerned, very nervous, scared to go out. And so there is more isolation than, just the base level isolation. So things that agencies, and even like the Agency on Aging doing their telephone reassurance, different things like that, that have been put into place, I think are pretty phenomenal.
And they're just to let you know, if you are, a loved one of a senior, there are a ton of online resources for scams, or even explaining and talking to your seniors in your life about how to avoid those things or what common things may come across. And you just support the tools that are, limitless. I saw something, I pulled something off of Salmon Health and Retirement here that had a bunch of senior fraud tips. But when, I got on knowing that this was coming up and I was looking for additional support beyond my own personal experience. And there were endless resources out there. There's also, the FBI has an online criminal, or ic3.gov. So India Charlie 3.gov. And it is a place where you can go and report online if you have been scammed.
Oh, good.
So it's a, kind of a warehouse for that kind of thing that lets, because these, if someone's calling from India, they're not just calling Kalispell.
Sure.
They're dumping calls throughout the nation, and as the national agencies can put these together, they have more tools to deal with them certainly than the Kalispell Police Department does.
Sure. That's awesome. And we'll go ahead and put all of these resource links in our show notes so people can go in there and
that'd be amazing. Yeah, you bet.
Absolutely. Well, we are just so proud to have you here. It's really been a pleasure and something that we've been looking forward to. We appreciate you. and I don't want to get all sappy about it, but really you need to know how much we appreciate you and your department and everything that law enforcement does, not just for us personally, but for the people that we serve and our community. Because I don't think there could be better law enforcement than what we have where we live.
I appreciate that. And if I had one way to describe how do we move forward in law enforcement? And how do we continue to do what we're doing in our community? And, it's just one man's opinion from my experience, right? Again, I'm just a Montana boy trying to do the right thing. It's you identify quality people, because all the policy and procedure in the world ultimately has to be manifested through a human being, and a human being that has to make those decisions. Yep. And if we're not hiring the right kind of people, we're not going to have good results. Yeah. And again, it's because of you guys and the appreciation I see in your face and the community here that I'm still able to do that when the rest of the world is struggling. Yeah. And so I'm grateful for that support.
Awesome. Look at us. We're all sad and sappy. Good Lord. Did you know you were going to be sitting here with a bunch of crybabies?
I feel it's honestly, it's an honor. It doesn't feel that way every day. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to having you, and it's really actually kind of ironic. I think it's been a couple of months we've been trying to get you in here, but you just have stuff. You never know what your day's going to be.
Yeah. It's it can change in a phone call.
One phone call and your whole day shot.
Yep.
Maybe your whole week.
Yep.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much. And we always like to wrap up our episodes with a grandma or a grandpa saying. And I don't know if you had anything that was shared with you by any elder family member or anything. If not, I have a good one that I think applies really well to today's episode.
Well, I'll first give a little honor to my mom here. My parents grew up in the Depression era, and just after that in the Nebraska area, and they moved to Montana in the 50s. So I really didn't have that relationship with my family from out of state, but my mom, they were a little older by the time they had me. Like I said, they kept trying until they got it right.
Perfect.
I'm the last of 5 kids. And, obviously tongue in cheek, but my mom was 4'11". But she would talk to anybody. And so that ultimately, which, when you're a young kid, it is just terrifying. That she is talking to every person everywhere and will just speak her mind, and usually in a humorous way. But she was 4'11", and by the time I was in high school, I was 6'2", and 160 pounds, so a complete beanpole. But every time that we went through a line, she would pull me in close and look. He takes right after me. So honor my mom, who I lost 11 years ago. So.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That's adorable. Yeah,
it's right after me. Well, my grandpa used to say, so when we were in high school, my brother and I lived with my grandma and Grandpa Fisher. And my grandpa used to always say to us, I'll give you $100 if you can come up with something new. And basically what I took from that is every teenager is an idiot, and you all do the same things to get yourselves in trouble. So until you come up with something new.
Just don't even been there, done that. Yeah. Yeah. So I have an officer's prayer that I'd like to say, and I'm not sure I can get through it. So I have ugly cried in front of America several times now. So anyway, this is a police officer's prayer. Lord, I ask you for courage to face and conquer my own fears. Courage to take me where others will not go. Lord, I ask for strength of body to protect others and strength of spirit to lead others. Lord, I ask for dedication to my job to do it well, dedication to my community to keep it safe. Lord, I ask for concern for others who trust me and compassion for those who need me. And please, Lord, through it all, be at my side.
Well, thank you guys. What an honor.
Awesome.
Cool time.
Well, listeners out there, we would love it if you would subscribe to us. You can do that on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You can watch all this beautiful mess on YouTube if you so desire. You can leave us a review and share us for your friends. Join our Apaga Care and Share group on Facebook. We would just love to hear from you. So if you want to send in verses or happy stories, you can do that at thecaregivenpodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's going to wrap it up for the day. So peace out, Girl Scouts.
Yep. Have a super day.